Since we're in Las Vegas, we thought we'd give you an important update on the US election. Sorry if this might run on a little long, but you have a right to know the depth of weird things that are taking place, as what happens here will ultimately affect you too. The media have decided to create the news, not report the news. It's not the press that gets to decide who the next president should be. It's the election results and the corresponding electoral college votes that decide. There are literally hundreds of alleged election procedure malfeasances currently going through the courts.
There was a lot of backdating of votes that came in after the deadline, and we have evidence now from not only the post office but from others that there was backdating.
On election night, Donald J. Trump was leading handsomely. We were right here watching the elections live when about 3 o'clock in the morning there was a sudden announcement that in 6 key states, vote counting was going to stop for the night. We looked at each other, well, that couldn't be right. Whoever imagined you could suspend the count in the middle of the night? We turned on to other TV channels as we couldn't believe it and checked, and voting had indeed stopped in 6 states. Bizarre, never even heard of it before. Next morning, lo and behold, Trump's lead in all 6 key states have been massively reduced. One state with a newly found dump of votes, all going to Joe Biden. 100% going to Joe Biden. That's not statistically possible. Some votes had to go to Trump and the other 2 running for president. By the way, did you even know there was 2 others running? Quite rightly, the President Trump sends out teams to these states to investigate. We haven't the time here to go through all the alleged malfeasances in all 6 states, from which there are many, from voting machine glitches, putting Trump votes into the Biden column, to some households receiving 18 postal votes. But in Pennsylvania, where Trump had been winning by huge margins, Republican poll officials went to enter to watch the count when they were barred by Philadelphia officials.
Call the police. Do it. If you legal, call.
The Pennsylvania election was a disaster. I mean, I only gave you the highlights. I mean, we have people that observe people being pushed out of the polling place. We have people who were suggested to vote the other way and shown how to do it. I'm giving you the big picture, where the numbers are such that you could reverse the call. That is the 450,000 that would not observe of mail ballots. And remember, the mail ballots were set from the beginning to be fraught with fraud. And instead of taking more care with them, they handled it like a Star Chamber proceeding. They literally counted these ballots in secret. And they counted these ballots in secret for only one reason. These ballots were always the ballots they were going to use to try to catch up if they were behind.
Heading up Trump's team, former Mayor Rudy Giuliani and former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi went to court and, of course, were granted permission to enter by the judge, as is their constitutional right to watch the count, but they were still not allowed in. Imagine, during an election, the leader of Hartlepool Council barred Labour members coming in to watch the count. Would you trust those results? I think not. In other states, Republicans were allowed in, but in some cases had to stand over 100 feet away, where, of course, you couldn't see anything. In Georgia, thousands of military ballots, which would have been predominantly for Trump, were found in a dumpster. Candace Owens, a black conservative commentator, highlighted a gentleman in Jackson County, Michigan, who went to the cemetery and typed in the names of dead people. Their date of birth was on the headstone, of course, only to find out most had requested an absentee ballot and had voted. June Aiken, born 1900, voted via absentee ballot in Michigan. That would make June 120 years old. 118-year-old William Bradley voted via absentee ballot in Wayne County, Michigan. William died back in 1984. There's hundreds. How long has this been going on? But remember that computer glitch I mentioned earlier? Michigan's Secretary of State confirmed yesterday, Friday, the 6th of November, that a software error in Antrim County, Michigan, in which Joe Biden was incorrectly awarded thousands of votes that led him to be declared the county winner, was caused by an error in which the county clerk, quote, did not update the software used to collect the voting machine data and reported unofficial results. Following the correction, the error, the county flipped back to Trump with more than 2,500 votes than Biden. The machines are administered by a company, Dominion Voting Systems, who currently have voting machines in 28 states and Puerto Rico. Dominion are working philanthropically to provide these systems in other countries as well, with the Clinton Foundation. Joe Biden should have made a questionable candidate a few weeks earlier when the New York Post broke the story about Joe's son, Hunter Biden.
Well, we've been treating this as an election story. How's this going to impact the election? Is Biden and will his Democratic allies be able to ignore and obfuscate everything that's happening for 12 more days? And those are interesting questions, but it's not the important question. Clearly now the important question is, are these emails real? Because if they are real, at best, Joe Biden was involved in some very sketchy stuff that he lied about. At worst, laws were broken. So they can try to pull Grandpa Joe over the finish line at this point, but the problem is that every piece of evidence that has come out over the past 7 days since this story dropped, including tonight's, suggests that these emails are real, and Joe Biden still refuses to refute that they are. So even if they manage to get Biden across and he wins, this scandal's not going anywhere. This scandal's very serious, and he's going to have to deal with it as president-elect if he wins. The American people need to think seriously about that. His
laptop, left in error at a computer repair store, revealed alleged payoff to the Bidens from Ukraine and China. But I'm guessing most of you haven't heard a peep on this. That's because there was barely a ripple, as the mainstream press wouldn't run with the story. Joe Biden should have been under immediate investigation when the Tucker Carlson interview of Tony Bobulinski aired the week before the election. I'm darn sure 99% of you have never even heard of Tony Bobulinski, because there was really an immediate shutdown by the mainstream media, as this one would most definitely have hurt Joe in the polls. Tony Bobulinski is not some Russian spy, as he sounds, but a former decorated US Navy lieutenant and was a former business associate of the Bidens. Bobulinski comes from a long line of military men in his family, and his awards and decorations confirmed by the military included the Navy Marine Corps Accommodation Medal, Achievement Medal, the National Defense Service Medal. In an interview with Fox host Tucker Carlson a week before the election, Bobulinski, a registered Democrat, told Carlson that the Biden family, quote, had aggressively leveraged the Biden family name to make millions of dollars from foreign entities, even though some were communist-controlled China. He goes on to give a lot of details.
It is spelled out in the clearest possible language in documents that Bobulinski provided us and documents that subsequently federal authorities have authenticated as real. On May 13, 2017, for example, Hunter Biden got an email explaining how his family would be paid for their deal with the Chinese energy company. His father, Joe Biden, was getting 10%.
In that email, there's a statement where they go through the equity. Jim Biden's referenced as, 10%. Doesn't say Biden, it says Jim. And then it has 10% for the big guy held by H. I 1,000% sit here and know that the big guy is referencing Joe Biden. That's crystal clear to me because I lived it.
When you think that the prospect of a future president might be compromised, these claims should be investigated. And if you change the name of Biden and Son to Trump and Son, wouldn't you know that this would have been plastered all over the airways 24/7 and then some? Not only by the mainstream media, but big tech shut down the Bobulinski story. They put a lid on it like you wouldn't believe. Finally, the benchmark for all this is the Gore-Bush election of 2000, when we were also living in the States at the time and also sat that night glued to our TV. This election was so close, it came down to one state, Florida. And it was so close, there were recounts after recounts, and finally, After 37 days, it had to be decided by the Supreme Court. So what's the big difference? In the year 2000, it was totally transparent. Both sides got to watch the count. The press were there, the TV were there. In all elections, you win some, you lose some. But when there's been total fairness and total transparency, you can accept it. You have to accept it. This election is the total opposite. Forget Trump. This is way bigger than him. The American people have to insist every process be open and transparent, and every dispute comprehensively and fairly resolved. Shame on the corrupt media who arbitrarily decided to make the news instead of report the news. But with the corrupt press, big tech censorship, social media censorship, and now clear election irregularities, this almost looks like a globalist coup. Far-fetched, you say? How long have you been locked down?
We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.